Hello and welcome to our talk show, EarthStar Talk. Today, I have my first guest here, and I'm very excited to talk to Ahuilitzli Mejia of Sacred Winds Healing Services. She is an extraordinary human being with a very intense spiritual background. But before we start the interview, I would like to set an intention with a little prayer process. I ask now the Prime Creator, source of all light and being, to bless these people sitting here in front, that only the truth comes forth to the best and highest good for everybody involved and to the best of my capacity and our capacities here as well. All right, wonderful. So thanks for coming, and let's talk a little bit about you first. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your connection to the spirit world?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for having me here today. I have been engaging in various modalities of healing work for over 30 years. And I'm now just starting to make it more available to people on a larger level. And my philosophy with Sacred Winds Healing Services is to make my services very user-friendly and easy and simple to use without taking away from the effectiveness, so that people are more likely to use it. People are less likely to do something that is more ritualistic and lengthy. And my hope is that they can continue to use these tools as we partnership to work on their healing.
Wonderful. So you have a very extraordinary name. Are you Native American?
Yes, I am mostly Native. Also on my father's side, my mother's side, we are Afro-Indigenous.
Okay. Interesting. So did you grow up in a very ceremonial background? Did your parents or some of your ancestors introduce you into their spiritual worldviews, or did it all come from your inner self?
My grandparents, who I spent a lot of time growing up in their home, were deeply spiritual. And so that had a large influence on me growing up. And so I just continued in those ways and continued to learn from a variety of different healing modalities, teachers that come from many different traditions.
Okay. So when you connect with spirit, how do you connect with spirit? How did you get your visions? Because I know we talk privately and we share some of the same visions about our planet, and that's a part of why I invited you here today. So how do you connect? Does it just come to you, or do you do a ceremony? Do you do a certain ritual for channeling these informations? What do you do to get your information from spirit?
As a small child, I would pick up information clairaudiently. And as I think maybe around 10 years old, I started being able to communicate more with the spirit world. And then at age, in my early 30s, I started studying from Thai Buddhist monks. I started studying meditation from them and went to live in the temple, in the Thai Buddhist temple for a while, and continued to study meditation from them. And in doing so, that helped me to tap into a lot of information, past, present, and future. A lot of the visions that I've had, or information that has been conveyed to me regarding things that are happening in the future, as well as in the past, has been conveyed to me in dreams as well as in my meditation. When I go walking in nature, I ask for guidance and I ask for clarity to receive that information, because of course, if we get guidance and we don't have the clarity to receive that information, that's not going to be very helpful.
Right. So true. So what I'm hearing is that when you walk in nature, you set an intent to receive information. So would you say that your intention to do something is important to receive?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, as well as clarity. And so meditation is a very, perhaps for me, the most important tool to clear out all the chaos and all of the mental chatter and emotions that get in the way of us being able to perceive, which create interference, such as emotions like grasping or fears. Those are interference when we're trying to get that those messages clearly.
So would you say that meditation helps you to kind of like step out of the 3D chaos and go into a little bit more oneness point where we are more in oneness with spirit and seeing the bigger picture, and therefore are not so tossed and turned in a 3-dimensional reality with all the dramas?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm sure that not everybody of our viewers is able to meditate so easily. What tips would you give them to make it a little bit easier to meditate? You mentioned, for example, nature. So just being in nature, can it be like a walking meditation to just walk in nature, pay attention and breathe and just pay attention to the environment? Is that the kind of meditation you do, or what kind of meditation do you exactly do? How do you start?
You know what? Thank you for asking. And this is a good point, because I hear a lot of people say that I can't meditate because I sit down to meditate and it just doesn't happen to me because I have so many thoughts going on, worries, concerns, etc. And so there's different types of meditation, even within the Theravada tradition. And by the way, I've also studied meditation briefly with the Tibetan Buddhist monks as well. And there's many different types of meditation, some that were taught to me by teachers in the physical, some that were taught to me by teachers in the spiritual world. And the different types of meditation are for different purposes, which produce different results.
Okay.
So the Vipassana meditation is an insight meditation. And I do also walking meditation in the Theravada tradition. And I actually like to do the walking meditation first. And so I find that helpful, especially when our minds might be, where we're having a harder time getting grounded or settled in. And the other thing too is thought forms have their own energy. And so when we sit down to meditate and all of a sudden all these thoughts come to us about, I need to pay this bill, or I need to make a decision about what I'm going to do about this or that. Oh, that's right, I forgot to take out some meat to defrost for dinner, or whatever it is that is filling your head. One of the ways that I was taught to neutralize all of that is to say it's not sure. And by doing that, what that refers to is your brain. And because your brain tends to believe that that's who we are, because your brain is physical, but we are more than physical. And to take a deep breath and clear out that thought. And we're not going to, people expect sometimes for the whole thought process to stop when you meditate, but that's not what's going to happen. That's not possible. And so instead, just observe the thoughts floating by like clouds, and then just view them objectively as opposed to getting caught up in them and following them and continuing with the stories.
I'm glad that you mentioned the brain, because I love Dr. Jill Bolte-Taylor. She is a brain scientist, and I love her 4 characters of the brain: the thinking left brain, the emotional left brain, the emotional right brain, and the thinking right brain, which, by the way, the right brain is leading us to our infinity and an eternity aspects. So she also says that any trigger we have lasts about 90 seconds biochemically in our body. So every 90 seconds, we can make a different choice. And I think that's pretty fascinating. So when the chatter starts in our mind, we can say no. And what I'm doing often is asking this question about, like you mentioned, the dinner or the bill, or how's that going to be in the greater scheme of things, like 5 years from today? I had a lot of drama recently with some travels, and there was a lot of things which didn't happen right. And, Sedona was close with fire, and then now the floods and all this sort of thing. So, and I asked myself, instead of panicking, what do I do? And that has any relevance in 5 years from today? And I oftentimes say, no, it doesn't. So why bother about it right now? It's not that traumatic if it's not that traumatic in 5 years. So, I mean, which dinner or other things might not be as, important in 5 years either. So maybe that's another hint we can do to say, no, 90 seconds are over, deep breather. And now we're focusing back at hand on oneness and our eternity aspect, and shift into the right brain energy, and shift in our infinity aspect. Okay, so that was very helpful about the meditation. And you were also saying something about grounding. Let me say, I find it very important because a lot of people are up here just in their mind, in their thinking mind, and to be grounded, to really tune into Mother Earth, embodying being here, even though we are with the awareness spirit, eternal spirit in a human body, but we are having a body, and we should pay attention to our body and being grounded with our feet on the earth, no rubber or any material between us and the earth, to really feel Mother Earth's pulse and be grounded by it. So how do you ground yourself?
And this is another good question, and I'm glad you're asking that, because this is going to become increasingly important as we move forward. There is great power in connecting with the Mother Earth, not only for grounding, but for healing and for messages. And so just like we open ourselves up to listening when we meditate, we want to create this ongoing bond with Mother Earth to provide us with important messages that we will need as we move forward. And the more you listen, the more you hear. I personally like to sit on the floor a lot, cross-legged, and in that way connect with the Mother Earth. There's times when maybe my energy level is low or I'm not feeling well. I will lay down on the Mother Earth and ask for healing, ask for energy, whatever I need. But yes, it's important to connect with Mother Earth. If you go to sacred sites such as the vortexes in Sedona, if you can take off your shoes and just allow that energy to run up your feet. But we really need to have a give and take relationship with Mother Earth on many different levels. And that's going to become increasingly important as we move forward.
Okay, two things. I gotten chills when you were talking about messages. So we have to talk about messages. Spirit wants us to talk about the messages of the upcoming times. But before we do that, you mentioned the vortexes in Sedona, and not everybody can come to Sedona to find vortexes and be here, especially if there are travel restrictions. So in that regard, I tell my clients, it would be good to find a ley line close to you where you're living, and the crisscrossing of ley lines oftentimes is like creates like a mini vortex. How do we find ley lines or energy lines of Mother Earth? By looking at the trees. And if a tree has two trunks, the energy goes right between the two trunks here. And that's where there's so much energy so that the trees have to build out two trunks. So when you have one, you will have another and another and another, and that will denote a ley line. And when they're crossing, that's oftentimes energy intense. So it is always good to meditate by the trees who are on ley lines, because that helps you like intense antennas to connect even better. But let's talk a little bit about the upcoming times, because again, I'm getting chills here. Spirit wants us to talk about this. And what information are you willing to share? I know you get information about the future, which are not very easy to digest. Me the same way. So maybe we can talk about some signals to be mindful of for our future when we see this, be careful about that, or whatever comes to mind. Ahuilitzli, so what would you say do we might have to look forward to, or have to pay attention to, or have to be cautious about?
This is the time that the Mayas refer to as the age of Itza. Itza means water. Water often implies purification. We are in a time of purification that is necessary for our spiritual evolution. And it's important to remember that first and foremost, we are spiritual beings with a physical body, not the other way around. And we are going through this time, and it is an incredibly powerful honor and a beautiful time to be alive. It is really an honor to be alive right now, although it is not an easy time to be alive. I kind of view it as when a woman is in labor, and initially the pains will be 5 minutes apart, and at that point in time, maybe you can still joke around between those pains. But then as the pains get closer together and as they get stronger, things get a little bit more intense. So our response needs to be for us to connect spiritually with the Mother Earth, with the 4 elements, with our spiritual guides and teachers, with the light even more intensely as we move into that sacredness of that intense pain. That is where we go and sit for refuge. And then, as the pains become closer and closer, eventually it's time to push out the baby, and the pains are really consistent and intense and unbearable. And then at that point in time, shortly after that, we have this beautiful new life. And once we see this beautiful new life, it is all well worth it. It was all well worth all the pain that we went through. Well, this is the analogy that I use, because as we move forward, we are going to experience more pain individually and collectively. And so how we react to all of this, and our response to all of this, and our mindset to all of this is extremely important to be attentive to and to take care of. We need to be, now more than ever, we need to be flexible thinkers. We will cause suffering to ourselves and others if we are more rigid. So we need to be flexible thinkers. We need to be working toward being more cooperative and collaborative, more deeply compassionate, patient, and empathetic. There's rewards for us individually in developing compassion and empathy. We will have more peace, and not only within ourselves, but within humanity. These are the things that we need to be working on as we move forward.
I love that comment. This of empathy, feeling and tuning into not just ourselves, which we often not even do, but also into the others. What does the other person feel? What does the other person might think? And develop this empathic aspect in our being. Beautifully said. And I love this analogy about the birthing and the birthing pain, because I can see that happening. Definitely, my guiding ones say that between 2020 and 2030, it's like a full moon cycle, also like the birthing, and that we all have to look at our undigested fears and emotions, and to tackle the beast of our fears by the horns and jump over it, to learn about self-responsibility, self-sufficiency, self-reliance, but also awareness about others, an aspect of water, our moon element, our feminine side, the right brain side in our being. Beautifully. So what would you say practically, what would be your message for the viewers besides this develop this empathic self as development in their spiritual self and spiritual side? What else would you like to put to the heart of the viewer to do or not to do?
One of the things that I would like to really invite people to do is to be more conscientious about the environment. Take care of the environment, support those who are taking care of the environment. Really check in with ourselves regularly in terms of where are we creating imbalances within ourselves, within our relationships, within the planet. And if we are putting ourselves in a predicament where we are giving too much, maybe step back. If we are in a position where we're not giving enough, that's something that we can work on. If there's things we need to do, if we need to apologize, if we need to be more patient, we need to work on refining ourselves. And the more we can do that right now, the more the purification will be easier for us. It's like those television commercials, act now and avoid the rush.
Well, I have to tell you just what you were talking about. I got chills again. My hair on my arms are still standing up. So all these seemingly so tiny little things have a great impact. Spirit wants to emphasize this. So thank you, that is great. And I know that you're doing healing work. So I saw on your website, which is sacredwindsealingservices.com, and I will have a link to that underneath this video if you want to book with Ahuilitzli, that you can do that. And I saw that you do a lot of ancestral healing. And I find it's very interesting because when we think about family constellations, you know, when something is not spoken about or ignored, it will create drama in the family lineage and can hop some generations. And then all of a sudden we are confronted with a dilemma which originally had nothing to do with us, as we are signing up for, when we sign up for this reality into this life, for 7 generations of family beliefs and disbeliefs. So how do you work with your clients when you do ancestral work?
There's one of the things that I work on in terms of forgiveness, helping our, let's say, for example, if we have earthbound spirits in our ancestry, helping them to go into the light. And this is also, you know, this is done very gently and lovingly and compassionately. So it's never about forcing anyone, but it's become very much of a popular practice, which I'm grateful and glad about. It's very needed. People need to be calling on their ancestors, but you don't want to call on your ancestors until there's been some clearing, until they're in a good place. Otherwise, you can open up some unfortunate energies for yourself. So that's really important. In terms of forgiving ourselves is very important. Not only forgiving ourselves in this lifetime for what we've done, but in previous lifetimes, and forgiving others. And then sometimes we need help with that. Sometimes it's not so easy to forgive others. And so it's okay, we can ask for help with that. Ask for help for others to forgive us. Ask for help for us to forgive other people. Ask for help to forgive ourselves. And this will lighten up the load on Mother Earth. This will lighten up the collective karma of humanity.
So how do you do that? Are you calling in the person you want to forgive? Or if you have images of past lives, are you calling in that image and ask, you know, I forgive you, I forgive myself, I forgive us both? Do you do it in your mind's eye, or how do you do it exactly?
This is another good question. Thank you. Because some people at first, they might think, well, I don't know about this calling on of spirits. That sounds kind of creepy. And, you know, I don't know if I want spirits in my house. But what you do is you're not actually calling on them to come to be present in your environment. What you're asking is that wherever they're at, that they be forgiven for everything and anything that they've ever done, be relieved of all their suffering, and be lifted up, so that it's not necessary to call them into your space. Now, once you have done that, and you want to develop a relationship with your ancestors, that's very powerful. And again, like any other kind of relationship, you want it to be a give and take situation. So praying for your ancestors, or whatever you do to give to your ancestors on an energetic and or spiritual level, as well as asking them, please look out, please protect me as I make my way to work and on my way home again, or wherever you are attempting to go. Or please help me with this particular situation, or this difficult person, or whatever it may be. So you can ask your ancestors for help and for guidance. 3 things that are important to ask for is strength, knowledge, and wisdom. But simultaneously, you want to give to them. Just like any other relationship, it needs to be a balance.
Okay, so how do you give to your ancestors? I know that in several cultures, they bring even food, like in Japan, they bring food, they bring fragrances, you know, incenses burning. Yes. And in others, they bring food on a mound or bring it to the grave site, or even digging up their ancestors and sit them on a chair. In some cultures, I've seen that very different than here in the Western world. So what would you recommend for the viewer, how to thank the ancestors? Just mentally saying, thank you all my relations, all my ancestors who walked the earth before me, who were part of my DNA structure, or how do you do it?
First of all, I want to be very respectful to people that come from many different traditions, spiritual traditions, as well as people that may be agnostic or atheists. And so I try to speak to everyone in their own language in terms of their beliefs, their perspectives, their traditions. And so for people that are more agnostic or atheists, you know, I try to use more of the scientific approach. Mm-hmm. But yes, it's true, and it's very powerful to do food offerings. I do food offerings. Of course, if people say, well, why do a food offering? They can't eat it. It nurtures their spirit. It helps them on their journey. If they are in transition, if they just passed, for the 49 days following their passing, if you can do that, especially on the day that is like every 7 days on the anniversary of the day that they passed, that will also help them to have a good transition into the next life. So food offerings, yes. If you pray, do creative visualization, anything like that, that will also help them. You know, you can pray for them if you pray. Yeah, so, and again, as I mentioned, the food offerings. So there's many different ways to give to your ancestors.
Okay. Interesting that you mentioned the days after their crossing over. As you know, I'm a medium, and people come to me to connect with their ancestors. And I noted one thing, and I just want to put that out here, that when a person is crossed over, they're not always totally disappearing from this reality right away. I have noticed that spirits stay to say their goodbye up to about a week after their passing. So oftentimes they visit people and relatives in their dreams to say their goodbyes, or even more physical if they can do so and materialize themselves in their old stomping grounds or houses or wherever they are, without being earthbound. And then about a week after the funeral, there's more connections as well. And then all of a sudden it stops. So like, if I found it interesting that you were saying the 7-day cycle, because I noticed that as well, that after 7 days, for example, after the funeral, all of a sudden there's nothing, because the spirit has to focus back to their home to make aware that they are no eternal soul, rather than a physical body with a physical identity in 3 dimension. So interesting observation that you have knowledge about the 7-day cycle as well. Okay, so any particular messages for the viewer? We talked about forgiveness already. That's great to make our load lighter and everybody else's load lighter too. Makes a lot of sense to me. I hope it makes a lot of sense to you viewers as well. Any other practical advice you might have for our viewers to take something with them from our talk today, which they can practice on a daily basis, or at least the one or other time, to connect to their spirituality and take that over into their daily lives?
Yes, I remember one time when I think it was about 25 years ago, and I was working on a project with Earthbound spirits. And I went to the elder monk and I said, Lumpa, and I explained to him what was happening, which was terrifying me. And he said, don't be afraid of your projects. This was Lumpa Suntoin from the Santa Rosa Temple, Thai Buddhist temple at the time. Don't be afraid of your projects. And I was like, but Lumpa, I was hoping this could be more like our project, more like your project. And the advice that he gave me when I was in this place of, I was experiencing a lot of fear. He didn't tell me, don't be afraid, or there's nothing to be afraid of, or there's no reason to be afraid. Because none of that ever helps, right?
Right.
What he said was like one of the most powerful tools that anyone ever gave me. And what he said is, let your compassion be greater than your fear. And so if I sometimes go to bless a house or anything like that, people say, wow, you can do this and you don't get afraid. I would get afraid. And you're very brave. And I tell them, it's not that I don't ever get afraid. It's just that I remember Lompo's words to me about let your compassion be greater than your fear, because those in the spirit world are suffering. If we see human beings suffering, we want to help them. These are also human beings, just without a body. And so to allow our compassion and our love to be much stronger than any kind of fear. And if we can just not just fill ourselves up with love, but be love, like truly just be the embodiment of love, then there's not going to be any more space for fear. And that's the space that we need to sit in. That is where we sit in the eye of the storm. One of the analogies that I use is it's like going through a cave, and the cave is dark, and we've traveled for a while through that cave, and we're getting weary and tired, and we're starting to feel sometimes like losing hope. And every now and then we catch a glimpse of the light at the end of the tunnel. So even in moments where the pathways in the cave curve, and maybe we have to climb more, and things there's more obstacles in our way, and it's more treacherous. Even in those moments where there's a curve in the pathway, and we cannot see the light at the end of the tunnel, we know the light at the end of the tunnel is there, and that is what we need to stay focused on.
Wonderful. And I think it's interesting that you talked about clearing and blessing houses, because I come from a background where I do a lot of, not ghost busting, that's an ugly word maybe, but clearing houses and clearing demons out of houses. I've been featured in several TV shows, a haunting twice and then another haunting in the heartland. And it can be really a little bit scary when we encounter a demon. And what I was told by my spirit guides is that if you develop, like you said, love, you become so strong that you become like a fountain of light. And have you ever felt the resistance when you put the thumb on a fountain? There's resistance of the water spouting up. So when you become a fountain of light by being love and practicing I love life and life loves me back, then this energy becomes strong in you like a balloon, and anything dark and negative cannot really approach you anymore. And that's exactly how I do the work with the house clearings too. I come in and people like to you said, oh, you're not afraid of it. And I said, well, not really. I mean, there are some sketchy moments, but not really, because I can trust the light in me. And may I share one little story of my own self, please? Interestingly enough, when I was at the Hopi Mesas, something followed me home, which was a very intense spirit and very dark, not really friendly, because it had something to do with crystal skulls, but that's another story. So it challenged me, and I asked my guides, what do I do? What do I do? And my guiding one said, well, we will take care of it, but tomorrow it will come back, and then you will have to deal with it. So it came back and it challenged me again. And I said, well, you have no right to interfere in my life. You have no right to interfere in my free will. I said it 3 times. And if you do not let go, then you will be dispersed. And so it tried to enter me and I let it. Please, for the viewers, do not do that. Do not let uncontrolled spirits enter your body if you do not have the help of your spirit guides really, really strongly. And then they were telling me, my guiding one, so okay, now, and by the way, it felt like hell was freezing over. It was ice cold in my body. It was really, really, really cold. And they said, envision your soul frequency, your soul light, your golden light flow from the top through your body. And envision that entity with love that is part of God's creation and had its purpose for whatever reason. But now it is time to go and be involved in love. And so I embraced it with love, and it dispersed in a million shards from the darkness it was. It became light. And they said, see, also the darkness is condensed light in effect. And that gave me a big learning lesson at the time, because I realized what we say in the blame shame game. Oh, this is good, this is bad, this is dark, this is light, this is this, this is that, which is part of duality. There's something bigger behind that concept of duality, and that's oneness. And in the oneness, there is light. So thank you for this comment about the love. I hope we can all be more in our heart and being heart-centered and being in our love. That was very good practical advice, and every step, every tiny step counts. So I shared a little extraordinary experience with the viewers with my encounter with a demonic entity. Do you have any particular extraordinary experience or spiritual experience you would like to share, which our viewer might say, oh, wow, if she can do it, I can do it?
Well, first of all, one thing that I would like to recommend is something that was shared with me many years ago by my spiritual teachers from many different traditions, and that is that there are projects out there that are way out of our league, regardless of who you are. And I would like to add that to my disclaimer. I cannot walk on water. And so, we have to be very humble and acknowledge what we have to. I always check before I work on a project. Is this out of my league, or is this something I'm supposed to do? And we want to make sure we're not coming from a place of ego, and we want to make sure that we're coming from a place of love. And I don't go out looking for situations to then be the rescuer or save or to soothe my ego. If I encounter something and there's no way to evade or walk away from it, then I will work with it. But in everything that I do, I am not forcing or pushing or pulling. I'm trying to be as loving as I can. And sometimes it requires a great deal of patience and time. Sometimes they linger on just a little bit longer than you would like for them to. But in that process, their energy gets lighter and lighter and lighter. And a lot of people have the perspective that earthbound spirits are evil people. And that's not necessarily true. It could happen for a variety of different reasons. And so, again, being compassionate, being patient, but not going out of our way to look for these situations. Yeah.
Okay. So one last question. What is your most favorite thing you do in your work? if clients should come to you and work with you, what do you love to do most from all you do? Yeah, where you would say, I love to work with clients who are open to change, who are, what area of your work do you love the most?
I practice different modalities from different traditions, such as like trauma release exercises and EFT. I do EFT different than everybody else.
Okay.
But so I enjoy doing that. But also because for me, when I do the healing work, it's not about me and what I would like. For me, it's more about what is it that that person needs to move into a place where they can develop, recognize, and refine their own medicine and come into their own power, to be able to develop on their spiritual path, to do what it is that they need to do. How best can I support them? And that might look like a variety of different ways. And so then watching them come into their own, not giving away their power anymore, connecting with their purpose and healing. I share that joy with them, and how I support them and what modalities I use may look totally different for each person.
Wonderful. So any last things we haven't mentioned and you would like to share before we close? I have the feeling that this was not our last interview. I think there are some more to come down the road, but anything you would like to share which we haven't mentioned yet?
Yes. One thing that I would like to share, and this is something that I started talking about years ago, is that I think maybe 30 years ago, I started talking about this, is that we're going to be moving into a time where more and more the truth is going to be revealed. And we're already seeing some of that on many different levels, and individually and collectively in many different areas of our lives, on the planet, historically and otherwise. And if we are to evolve, if we choose that path, we have to open ourselves up to truth. And if we align ourselves with truth, we'll be able to fulfill what it is that we are required to do in terms of our purpose here on Earth. If we resist, we will experience constriction. And this constriction will make us increasingly uncomfortable. If we move into a place of truth, we'll experience expansion and peace. And truth is not always fun and easy. Sometimes there's uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about our relationships, about our past, about our families, about our communities, about the planet, about the future of humanity. However, the more that we can sit in that place of truth and embrace the truth that there is, in a lot of cultures, that truth is synonymous with God. So embracing that truth humbly with an open heart and an open mind is how we need to move forward, even when the truth is uncomfortable. And as I mentioned earlier, sitting in that place of humility, if there's becoming better listeners, requires humility to sit in a place of humility. It requires humility to sit in a place of truth, because, as I mentioned, the truth is not always comfortable, but we again have to be flexible thinkers as we move forward, because Mother Earth is doing this shifting, whether we like it or not, whether we're ready or not. These changes are going to happen. And so we have to really learn how to go with the flow.
Well, thank you so much for these wonderful words. It was delightful to talk to you. And I think maybe another time we talk more about specifics about what's coming down onto us, to shift ourselves from 3D to 4 dimension, or shift Mother Earth into more freedom of our body, and renew ourselves, like you said, in a birthing. Thank you so much, Ahuilitzli, for being here today. I loved our interview. I hope the viewers do it too. And on the bottom, there will be a link to sacredwindshealingservices.com, and you can book a session if you so desire. For now, I thank you very much, and I wish you all the best. Thank you for coming.
And thank you for having me, Claudia.
It was delightful.
Yes.
Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.